Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and hope everybody's having a good day, and much appreciated you guys swinging by the channel to check out the video. Today we're going to be talking about that BFL tournament I fished at Table Rock this past weekend. And what I wanted to do, guys, is I want to go over what I learned in this tournament and some things that really shocked me and surprised me. Because one of the things about bass fishing, you never stop learning. It's like I am still a student of the fish. I always will be. Everybody is. And bass are this wonderful, mysterious, magical creatures that have a mind of their own, and they don't follow rules. And there's something that I learn all the time. So I'm going to go over some stuff that I observed in this tournament that really surprised me. And hopefully, by the end of this video, it'll help you guys have a better understanding about bass and your ability to catch them and things you can do to generate strikes under a variety of conditions. Also, guys, before we get started, just two quick things I wanted to go over. Anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler. Shoot me a private message. And also, guys, you guys heard that I caught quite a few fish this past week on that Megabass mag draft, and I've had a bunch of questions and comments the last 2 days about the rod that I use for my Megabass mag draft swim bait. The rod I use, guys, this is the Megabass Perfect Pitch. This is a 7-foot 2-inch rod. I consider it like a medium heavy, perfect for the mag draft. You can fish the 5-inch model on it like this, or you can fish the 6-inch model. But the overall, action of this rod, the length of it makes it perfect for mag draft fishing. So I'll put this in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys like to try one of these perfect pitch rods. Works out really good. Also, guys, on that mag draft, another little tip with it, on the 5-inch model, fish it on 12-pound tests. I use Seaguar and VizX, or 15-pound test Seaguar and VizX on the 6-inch model. So really appreciate that. Okay, I sort of wanted to have this sort of a wide-ranging conversation on, what for Table Rock last week. I got to practice down there for 2 days and then fish the tournament yesterday. And I fish Table Rock a lot, guys. That's where I do most of my on-the-water lessons. And, it's only 30 miles from my house here in Springfield, so I'm down there quite a bit. So I sort of want to go over what I saw that really surprised me in this particular tournament. And one of the things that I realize is that when you're trying to understand bass, and especially when you're trying to develop a knowledge of seasonal patterns and seasonal movements of fish, that you can't go year by year as far as the same things happening year over year, because you can have a bass that is in a certain place at a certain time any month of the year, and then the next year they may be in a completely different place. Those variables that determine that and change that are based upon like your water level, your water clarity, the weather patterns that you have, fishing pressure. There's a lot of different variables that you have that make bass unpredictable and do things that really do not make any sense. So here's some things that I saw last week that really surprised me at the lake. Now, one of the things I talk about a lot here on the channel is that all the bass they're never doing the same thing at the same time. And it has never been more obvious than what I saw at Table Rock this past week. Because at Table Rock, you had some bass that were still deep. You had some bass that were actually bedding. You had some bass that were cruising. You had some bass that were in the mid-depth range. You had some bass on boat docks. You had bass in flooded bushes. You had bass in the back of the coves. There's just a ton of stuff going on, and it makes it very it's like, where do you start? It's like when you try to determine where you want to fish at, you go, okay, do I want to target smallmouth on the lower end of the lake? Do I want to look for bedding fish? Do I want to fish a floating worm? Do I want to run up to the dirty water and fish a jig and a spinnerbait? You got to make some determination with that. So here's some stuff that I learned this past week that I think is going to help you out, during this time of year. Now, we'll try to do something like this for every month of the year. But here's the conditions that we had at Table Rock, and I'm going to sort of lay it out and explain to you, what was going on here. The lake was about 5 feet high. Water temperatures were in the 60s. There was a lot of bass on the beds, and it depends on the part of the lake. There were some parts of the lake had more bass on the beds than others. Most of the bedding activity when we were down there was the mid to lower end. The upper extremities of the lake, there wasn't much activity or much evidence of bedding. Not necessarily to say that you couldn't catch, those fish were not bedding, but when you're dealing with off-colored water, and sort of unstable water conditions, it makes those bass, they're real finicky when it comes to bedding. Some of them bed, some of them don't, some of them give up on it, some of them are earlier or later, anything in that. So things that I found with this in this tournament that surprised me is, number one, most of the bass, when they're bedding, the bigger bass like to bed deeper. They just feel more secure. It's very rare to see a big bass bedding in shallow water. Most of the bass that you see bedding in shallow water are, your smaller bass, especially spotted bass, and very spooky, very finicky. Just very, very aware. And it really amazes me, one of the things about bass fishing, when you see these fish shallow, how each bass has a different mood and personality. Because let me give you an example of these bedding or cruising bass there. If you see a bass cruising in clear water like a table rock right now, you might throw to one of those bass, you see this bass swimming along the bank there in a couple feet of water, and you may throw a wacky rig over to that bass, and as soon as that wacky rig hits, they just dart out 1,000,000 miles an hour, like you scared the crap out of them. Another bass, you can go right across the cove and you can see a bass swimming along the bank, and you throw that wacky rig to it, and as soon as it hits the water, that bass will run over to it and gobble it up as quick as it can get it. So that's one of the things that really, really surprises me about bass, is how different they are in terms of their mood and their personality. Now, I don't understand this. Maybe you guys have an explanation of this. Why is it that one bass spooks out like crazy if they see a bait in the water, and the next bass tries to gobble it up? I don't quite understand that. Same with the mag draft fishing. I was fishing a mag draft down there quite a bit at Table Rock in the clear water, and I'd be fishing. I'd throw that mag draft out there and I'd be reeling it in, and all of a sudden, as I was reeling it, there would be a bass slowly swimming up behind it, and they'd look at it and then just swim away. And then 5 casts later, you'd be making the same cast, and you're reeling that mag draft, and all of a sudden this bass comes out of nowhere and just clobbers the thing. I mean, as fast as it can get to, it clobbers this mag draft, and the other bass just sort of swims away. What is it? What is it that makes those fish do that? I still, to this day, I don't understand that. I really don't. But I've seen that evidence in a lot of different situations. So that was one of the things that really stood out to me quite a bit. Now, the other thing that really puzzled me a little bit, and we talked about this a little bit in my post-tournament video yesterday, is the flooded bush pitching and flipping bite. Now, here's one of the things that I have seen change over the course of the years, and I'm learning this more and more as far as how bass evolve quickly. I fish Table Rock. You guys have heard me forever. And back in the 80s and 90s, when the lake would come up, as soon as the lake come up, guys, you could take a jig and you could flip flooded bushes and you could catch them right and left. Good fish, too. I'm talking about 15, 20-pound bags of fish. I mean, at any time the water came up. One of the things that I have noticed about Table Rock and a lot of lakes across the country, I've also noticed it like on Kentucky Lake when the water comes up in the bushes. When that water first comes up in the bushes fast, those good fish don't move up in there hardly at all. It's always the little fish that move up in there. And yesterday, the water's been up, for about a week or so at Table Rock, and there was a bunch of fish in the bushes, but they were all little ones. Most of the bass were under 2 pounds that were in the bushes. Out of 30 or 40 fish that we caught flipping bushes yesterday, we didn't catch anything over 2.5 pounds. And, why is that? It's like, if you're a bass, let's say, for example, you're a bass and you're living in this one creek arm of the lake, and the water's level, normal, and you're just swimming along, and you're around a boat dock a little bit, then you're around a rock, and maybe pull out to deeper water. And then all of a sudden, and you're looking for ambush points and cover. So all of a sudden, the lake comes up 5 or 6 feet, and you got this cover everywhere. You've got flooded trees, you've got flooded bushes, you got sawdust mats, you got all types of cover that is in really, really shallow water. Why are those big fish not moving up into that heavy cover to take advantage of that ambush point? Why is it just the small fish that move up there? I don't understand it. I can theorize what it is a little bit, But what I have seen, the bass have evolved to where they do not like to be in shallow water as much as they used to. I have seen this in a big way, and I was talking about this. I've been talking about this a lot the last couple months. Is that something has changed in the DNA of a bass, in the larger bass especially. It's like when it doesn't make any difference if the cover's flooded or whatever, but the big bass, the quality bass of 4 pounds and above on Table Rock Lake and in most lakes across the country, they simply do not live in that shallow water like they used to. They don't. There's a few of them that do occasionally, and there are times when there's big ones up shallow. But the only way that I can equate this is based upon my experience of fishing for 50 years. I have seen this evolution. I have seen this evolution where you used to have a large population of big bass that were in shallow water. When I'm saying shallow, I'm saying like less than 5 or 10 feet of water, no more than 10 feet. Most of the time, 2 to 5 foot. Lots of quality, good fish. And now those fish are not there. Prime example is that one of the number one ways to win tournaments forever in my part of the country and in other parts of the country too was fishing the extremities. You'd run to like the stained water up the river arms or the stained water in the back of the creeks, and tons of tournaments got won doing that. Now, that never happens. You cannot win tournaments by doing that. Prime example, guys, let me give you one prime example. There was a period of about 20 years down at Grand Lake where you could run up the Spring River and the Neosho River arm of Grand Lake, usually anytime between May and October, and that's where most of the tournaments were won, fishing spinner baits, flipping square bill crankbaits on shallow rock and wood up there. There hasn't been a tournament won at Grand Lake for a decade doing that. Those fish do not live up there like they used to. Those same fish like down at Grand Lake when you used to be able to catch 20-pound bags just throwing a crankbait down rocky banks, those fish don't live there anymore. They're gone. The fish are either not there in the numbers they used to be, or the bass have evolved to move off the bank. And that's why the spotlighters are catching them. Personally, I think it's a combination of both. I think that we have less than half of the bass in our lakes than we did 20 years ago. I just simply think those bass are gone. Another example with that, guys, when I launched my boat in practice down there in the Indian Creek arm, this ramp that I launched there was at least 10 or 15 bass fillets or bass carcasses where people had filleted bass out. And most of these guys fish at night. A lot of them keep over their limit. And tons of people still keep and eat bass. And I think that as fishing pressure increases and there's more people fishing, there's more people keeping fish. And the conservation departments do a terrible job of the data they collect on the fish populations, because the way that they collect fish populations it's not a good system. You can't ask some dude that has a 6-pack of Bud Light on his front deck how many bass they caught one day and expect that to be some type of a gospel truth. That's not a scientific study. So I don't think there's as many bass, but I think just as equally, I think bass evolve. One of the reasons bass have been on this planet for over 3 million years is they go through an evolutionary process like every creature on this planet does. Every creature evolves to adapt to its environment. And I think bass have evolved to adapt to their environment of that fishing pressure. So therefore, they know intuitively and instinctively not to be in certain areas or not to bite certain baits because it's going to jeopardize their very survival. And it's something that they don't consciously know. It's just in their DNA. It's one of those mysteries of life about how they do that. It's the same with, how does a monarch butterfly know how to get its way down to South America? How does a bird know not to eat a poisonous seed? How does a goose know where to fly to from Canada down to the Gulf Coast? There's all these examples of the innate intelligence that creatures on this planet have, and bass are no different. Bass are geniuses. They're masters of their environment. So anyway, guys, just a few random thoughts. I don't know if I had any direction I wanted to go on that, but I just wanted to share with you guys a few things that came to my mind over this past tournament. So I'll keep doing stuff like this, man. I just one of the things I like about doing these YouTube videos, I can sort of bounce off things that are on my mind to you guys and get some feedback from you guys and let me know what you guys think. Because heck, I don't know everything about bass fishing. I'll be the first to admit. I work hard at it, and I've been doing it for a long time. And every time I think I know a lot about bass fishing, something will happen that makes me realize how much I have to learn. So, anyway, guys, hope you guys are well. We'll talk later.